And obviously yourself, John Joe, if we were to rewind back probably, perhaps same time last year when you and I chatting, I was in an organization, you were coming to me about potentially working from a partnership. And here you are, you're now running your own sort of recruitment house. You moved away from being an employee, so to speak. Are you very much part of that sort of generation and that sort of candidate where you are yourself looking to find more meaning too?
It's a good question. I would say yes. I've been very
Mm,
fortunate that the decision to go out by myself and run my own business has been a great opportunity from a commercial aspect, from a growth in business, growth in career perspective. They've all been things that I've been able to access. I've been very lucky on that point. The second point is I've been able to access greater work-life balance, more time with my young family,
love it.
and more time to do some, perhaps what would you call it without being trite, some self-development work. I've been able to access that as well, and whether that's because of the post-pandemic era, I'm not sure. So I've been able to do both, which is quite unique, I think. But if I hadn't have done this, I think I'd still be in a position where I'd be looking to access a greater work-life balance or greater
Mm.
meaning in some way, whether it is through work or other. I think that's something that'd be a key part of my decision making if I was to go and work for somebody else, I would say.
Did COVID prompt you, John Joe, or was it more something that it was always in you and you were just trying to maybe find an opportunity to branch out? Or
I would say it was always in me. I wouldn't say I was necessarily an entrepreneur. Perhaps there are much more entrepreneurial people out there than me with
Mm,
great ideas, but the idea of challenging myself has been pretty inherent, and starting something myself was perhaps the most logical next step in the industry I was in.
mm,
So I think from a young age, I was quite conscious that I would like to do that. I've come from a family that have been mostly self-employed in, not in this industry, mostly blue collar trade industries. So it's been something that I've grown up with, and I think I always wanted to do. Um, so yeah, it was probably going to happen at some point, but COVID may have pushed it in that direction.
mm. And you mentioned sort of self-development growth. Um, are you working towards something in particular that prompts you to grow, or is it very much something that's built into you where, as an individual, you know, if you don't grow, you might as well be stale? I'm sure you're not too heard of that sort of phrase where it's actually not okay to sit still, like you have to grow, right? So I'm curious to see from your end, John Joe, what's the motivation behind you growing?
I agree. Yeah, I think that's certainly something that's been a big part of my personality. So just an appetite for growth.
Mm,
The reason why I did this was a real thought about if you're not challenging yourself, you don't feel uncomfortable, you don't, and that's proven by neurology to an extent.
oh, wow. Okay.
If you're not,
Okay.
I did it anecdotally, but it's proven that if you don't challenge yourself to a point beyond your own confidence, you don't get the maximum effect of development and learning as a result of that. So what you just said anecdotally is in fact proven from a scientific perspective. So yeah, it's certainly been a need to grow, and the word growth will continue to change probably year to year for me. Growth, what it means to me now is different to what it meant 5 years ago.
Interesting.
So that innate, perhaps you might say, innate desire for growth is good and bad. It's a bit of a dichotomy really, because I'm constantly looking for growth, and that call it monkey brain or survival part of our evolution means that I'm typically on all the time, and that survival mode has meant that I've had relative success in professional sport and then the corporate sector as well. So I'm always looking for that. The downside of that is having that, which is over enhanced, means that you are on all the time and you are in survival mode. So without good proper checks and balances in place, that can lead to anxiety quite quickly, because there's a real need for control, to control the uncontrollable. And that desire to control things has meant that I've typically outworked or probably outworked. And that's why I've had relevant success. That need to control has meant that I've probably worked in a certain way, which has brought certain things. But the flip side of it is it can be potentially damaging, not to me, but it could be potentially damaging if you're purely operating in survival mode every day, all day.
Have you now got the checks and balances in place to prompt you when you do find yourself being on for too long?
It's a work in progress, but I feel I'm starting to discover tools that allow me to get that, for sure. But it's certainly a work in progress.
It's tough, actually.
I think being aware of it is perhaps a good first step.
And what happens if I put you in a situation where, here's a question for you, right? You really got me thinking, right? Would you want to be in a situation where you're off?
I think I would. However, we find ourselves in the world that we're in and the structures that we know, which are as they are, they're pretty objective. We perhaps don't need to give an opinion on them.
That's true. Very good point.
But they are as they are. So in order to thrive and survive, with the using a trite phrase again, you kind of need to be, I think to step into that world and again survive. I think you need to be, to an extent, to the level
you need to play that game, isn't it?
You need to play that game. That's right.
We do.
To the level that you decide to invest in it versus the outcomes you can gain from it is perhaps up to you. But yeah, in an ideal world, you could be off, but you perhaps need to step in and beyond. So the where I'm at right now could change in a few years, is perhaps a philosophy on stepping into the game, playing as best I can during that time. And then when I don't need to be in the game, giving myself an opportunity to be off. I think that's the analogy we're using, but be more open to whatever it might be and not controlling the uncontrollables and just experiencing. Being present is probably a big thing that I'm probably trying to achieve, which again, in survival mode, you're perhaps not thinking about being present.